The night was unusually clear at the United Earth Space Observatory when the first unmistakable signs of the Thalaxian fleet pierced the serene blackness of space. Dr. Marcus Reed, his eyes glued to the telescope, could hardly contain his disbelief. The serene blackness of space was pierced by a fleet of ships unlike any he'd seen in the logs or his wildest dreams. "Marcus, you seeing this?" his colleague, Dr. Alex Jensen, asked, stepping beside him with a palpable tension in his voice. "It's them, isn't it? The Thalaxians," Marcus replied without shifting his gaze. Alex nodded, his eyes also fixed on the view. "Has to be. Nothing else matches the profile. They're early, and there's a lot of them." The observatory was abuzz with activity as more scientists and military personnel flooded into the control room. Every screen was tuned to the incoming fleet, every ear awaiting the first communication from the visitors. Suddenly, the main console lit up, a signal cutting sharply through the chatter. An eerie, modulated voice filled the room, speaking in perfect, unaccented English. "People of Earth, we are the Thalaxian Dominion. Your expansion into the cosmos has been noted and deemed a threat to the galactic balance. You will cease all extraterrestrial colonization efforts immediately or face the consequences. You have 6 months to comply." The message repeated once more, then the channel went silent. General Helen Ramirez, the military liaison, turned to the assembled group. "We need options, people, and fast. Marcus, Alex, I want you in on this. What can you tell us about their biology? Any weaknesses?" Marcus exchanged a look with Alex. "Their biosignatures are unique, heavily reliant on nitrogen processing. It might be something we can use, but we'll need time to develop it." "Get to it," Ramirez commanded. "I'll arrange for you to have whatever resources you need. This isn't just about military might. We need a smart defense." As the group dispersed, Marcus and Alex headed to the lab, deep in thought. "How are we going to pull this off, Marcus?" Alex asked, his forehead creased with worry. "A biological solution seems risky, not just for them but for any ecosystem they interact with." Marcus was silent for a moment before responding. "What if we think smaller? Not a virus or a bacteria, something already part of Earth's arsenal, something we can control." "You mean like insects? Bees, perhaps?" Alex suggested, half joking. "Exactly like bees," Marcus said seriously. "Genetically modified to target Thalaxian agriculture, maybe. It could cripple their supply chains without firing a shot." Alex considered this, then nodded slowly. "It's non-lethal, targeted, and reversible. It might just work, Marcus, but we'll need help. Genetics, exobiology, entomology. We'll get the best. Let's draft the proposal," Marcus decided, his mind racing with possibilities. Together, they began outlining their plan, knowing the weight of humanity rested on their ability to innovate under pressure. As they worked, the gravity of their task loomed large. Yet, there was a flicker of excitement, too. The kind that came from facing the unknown, armed with nothing but one's wits and the silent, ever-diligent workers of Earth's own natural world, the bees. In the seclusion of a high-security laboratory nestled in the Nevada desert, Marcus and Alex began their audacious project. The lab, typically reserved for classified biological research, was now the ground zero for what they had codenamed Operation Pollinator. "Let's break down the genetics first. We need these bees not just to survive on whatever the Thalaxians cultivate, but to actually disrupt it," Marcus explained, as he swiped through digital blueprints on a large touchscreen. Around him, a team of specialists in genetics and exobiology gathered, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and concern. Dr. Elena Torres, a leading geneticist, raised a crucial point. "We're talking about not just surviving alien conditions, but also interacting with their crops. The bees will need significant modifications, enhanced survivability in different atmospheres, and targeted aggression towards specific Thalaxian crops." Alex nodded, tapping notes into his tablet. "Correct. And let's not forget, we need them to be controllable. We can't risk an invasive species scenario on another planet." The team agreed, and they divided the tasks. Elena and her genetics team would focus on the bees' survivability and functionality, while Marcus and Alex would liaise with aerospace engineers to design containment and delivery systems for the bees. In another part of the facility, Marcus walked into a meeting with Colonel Davies, the aerospace engineer tasked with the delivery mechanism. The room was stark, illuminated by the glow of holographic displays showing spacecraft and payload designs. "Colonel, the key here is precision. We can't afford a scattergun approach. The bees need to be deployed directly onto the target zones, Thalaxian agricultural sites," Marcus stressed. Colonel Davies nodded, manipulating the hologram to zoom in on a sleek, unmanned delivery drone. We're adapting some of our existing covert ops tech. These drones can enter and exit an atmosphere silently. They'll be equipped with biodegradable release pods designed to disintegrate upon delivery. Back in the genetics lab, Elena was deep in discussion with her team. The gene editing phase is crucial. We've identified several genes that can be tweaked to enhance the bees' aggressiveness towards the Thalaxian crops. We're also incorporating a fail-safe mechanism. If they deviate from the targeted crops, they self-terminate. As the day turned into night, the entire team worked relentlessly, aware of the ticking clock. Marcus took a moment to step outside, gazing at the starlit sky. The weight of their task was enormous. Using nature as a weapon was not what he'd signed up for as a scientist. Yet the alternative, full-scale war or capitulation, was unthinkable. Inside, Alex joined him, handing him a coffee. Tough decisions, huh? Yeah, Marcus sighed, taking a sip. But remember, Alex, this isn't about creating a weapon. It's about crafting a deterrent. We're not here to start wars. We're here to prevent one. Alex nodded solemnly, looking out at the expansive desert. Let's hope the universe agrees with our methods. Together, they returned to the lab, ready to oversee the next phase of testing. The first batch of modified bees was ready for a controlled environment trial. This test would determine the viability of their plan, and ultimately, the potential for peace, or a new kind of warfare. At the edge of dawn, the Nevada desert was quiet, the silence only broken by the low hum of machinery and the occasional gust of wind. Inside the high-security lab, Marcus, Alex, and their team were gathered around a large, sealed terrarium. Today was the first real-world test of their genetically modified bees. All right, everyone, this is it, Marcus announced, checking the environmental settings on the terrarium one last time. If these bees can effectively target and destroy these simulated Thalaxian crops, we're green-lit for the next phase. Elena nodded, her expression tense. The bees have been engineered to identify and break down the specific biochemistry of the crops we've replicated here, based on the samples we managed to procure from Thalaxian waste material. This should mimic their agricultural fields. As the team members took their positions behind the safety glass, Alex initiated the test. Releasing bees in 3, 2, 1. A small hatch slid open, and a swarm of bees, slightly larger than their Earth counterparts and with a noticeable metallic sheen to their wings, buzzed into the terrarium. They quickly dispersed, flying over the rows of alien-looking plants. The team watched intently as the bees began to work. They descended on the crops, moving methodically from one plant to the next. The plants reacted almost immediately, wilting and decomposing at an accelerated rate upon contact with the bees. It's working, Elena whispered, barely containing her excitement. Look at the precision with which they're targeting the crops. The genetic modifications are performing exactly as planned. Marcus recorded the observations, his mind racing with the implications. This is more than just a successful test. We've proved that we can use Earth's natural resources to defend ourselves in ways that don't involve traditional weapons. The experiment continued for another hour, with the bees systematically dismantling over 90% of the crops. Satisfied, Alex began the process of safely recalling the bees into their containment unit within the terrarium. Colonel Davies, who had been observing from the back, stepped forward. I'll report this success to the higher-ups. We need to move quickly to scale and deploy if we want to meet the deadline. As the team began discussing logistics for larger-scale production and deployment, Marcus pulled Alex aside. We need to ensure that these bees can't evolve beyond our control. The last thing we need is an ecological disaster on another world. Alex nodded in agreement. Elena's team is already working on a termination gene. If the bees stray from their target crops, they'll die off. It's a built-in safety feature. Reassured, Marcus looked over at the terrarium where the last of the bees were being contained. Let's document everything and prepare for the next briefing. We need to be transparent about our approach. Ethical considerations are as crucial as technical ones. As the sun rose over the desert, casting long shadows across the lab, the team felt a mixture of triumph and trepidation. They had created something extraordinary, a testament to human ingenuity and a potential turning point in interstellar relations. But as with all powerful tools, the true test would be in its use, and in this case, the stakes were galactic. The success of the initial test with the genetically modified bees had spread a cautious optimism among Marcus, Alex, and their team. Yet, the Thalaxians were not idle observers. Within days, the situation escalated beyond the confines of controlled experiments and strategic planning. Early one morning, as Marcus reviewed data from the latest bee trials, an urgent message flashed across his screen. Immediate briefing at Central Command, it read, signaling a shift in the situation. Arriving at the command center, Marcus found the room already buzzing with heightened activity. Screens displayed various points of human colonization across the solar system, each marked with status updates. Alex was there, his face set in a grim expression as he approached Marcus. "It's bad," Alex said, cutting to the chase. "Thalaxian ships have initiated strikes against our outer colonies. They're calling it a preemptive action against human aggression." Marcus felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. "Casualties?" "In the hundreds," Alex replied. "Mostly in the outer systems. They claim we violated the terms of the ultimatum. They must have detected the test somehow." General Ramirez joined them, her face etched with resolve. "We need to respond, but not in the way they expect. The bees are our best shot at a non-lethal counter that can bring them to the negotiation table." Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of their next steps. "We need to deploy the bees on a larger scale, directly to Thalaxian agricultural centers. If we can cripple their food supply, it might force them back without further loss of human life." The plan was set into motion. Marcus and Alex coordinated with Colonel Davies to prepare the modified bees for their first real mission. The deployment needed to be stealthy and precise to avoid escalating the conflict further. Days later, under the cover of darkness, a fleet of unmanned drones carrying the bee pods launched from a hidden base on the moon. Their targets were several key Thalaxian-controlled planets known for their vast agricultural outputs. Marcus watched the operation from the command center, his heart racing as the drones approached their destinations. The feed from the drones showed the release of the bee pods, which parachuted down onto the alien fields and disintegrated upon impact, releasing the swarms of modified bees into the Thalaxian environment. The initial reports were more successful than anyone dared hope. The bees adapted instantly to the alien conditions and began their work. Thalaxian surveillance feeds, intercepted by Earth's hackers, showed chaos unfolding in the fields. Crops wilted and died at an alarming rate, throwing the alien supply chains into disarray. Yet, the victory was bittersweet. The Thalaxians broadcasted a distressing message across all frequencies, their leader's voice filled with a mix of fury and desperation. "This act of biological warfare will not go unanswered. Humanity has declared its intentions clearly. Prepare for the consequences." Back at the command center, the mood was somber. They had achieved their goal, but at what cost? Marcus looked around at the tense faces of his team, knowing that they had crossed a line from which there was no return. The Thalaxians would retaliate, and how many more would suffer on both sides before peace could be brokered? As the team prepared for the next phase, Marcus found himself hoping that their actions would ultimately lead to a resolution, not a prolonged war. The weight of their decisions, the lives impacted, weighed heavily on him as he stepped out into the cool night air, looking up at the stars, wondering about the future they were all hurtling towards. Following the successful yet provocative deployment of the modified bees, tensions between Earth and the Thalaxian Dominion reached a fever pitch. The Thalaxians intensified their attacks, targeting not just human colonies, but also key infrastructural nodes, disrupting trade and communication across human-controlled space. The human military response was swift, but fraught with the risk of escalating into full-blown war. In a high-stakes meeting at Earth's Central Command, Marcus, Alex, and General Ramirez discussed the urgent need for a new strategy. "We can't just keep responding with force," Marcus argued. "We need to find a way to undermine their moral authority. If we can show the galaxy that the Thalaxians aren't the benevolent overseers they claim to be." Alex nodded in agreement. "There have been rumors, whispers from the outer sectors, that the Thalaxians have been manipulating ecosystems and wiping out native species to make room for their agriculture. We've never had proof." General Ramirez, her expression stern, leaned in. "If you can find evidence of this, it could change the narrative. We could bring this before the Galactic Council, sway public opinion." The decision was made. Marcus and Alex would lead a covert operation to infiltrate a Thalaxian-controlled planet, known as Sector 957, where such activities were rumored to be most rampant. Equipped with stealth technology, Marcus and Alex landed on Sector 957 under the cover of darkness. The planet was eerily quiet, with vast fields of unnaturally uniform crops stretching as far as the eye could see. Using specialized scanning equipment, they began to survey the area. It didn't take long before they discovered anomalies. The native flora and fauna signals were almost non-existent, a clear sign of ecological tampering. As they collected samples and data, Marcus spotted a hidden facility, its architecture unmistakably Thalaxian. "Over there, let's check it out. That might be where they're engineering the crops or something worse." Inside the facility, they found more than they bargained for. Rows of containment units housed various alien species, many clearly suffering or mutated. Terminals displayed data on genetic experiments aimed at eradicating any competing native species to make the Thalaxian crops more viable. Alex documented everything on his camera, the grim reality setting in. "This is genocide, Marcus. Ecological and literal." With all the evidence they needed, they prepared to leave, but not before wiping the facility's data to hinder further Thalaxian efforts. The return trip was tense, knowing the impact their findings could have. Back on Earth, the evidence was presented to an emergency session of the Galactic Council. Images and data from Sector 957 were broadcast galaxy-wide, showing the Thalaxian activities in stark, undeniable detail. The revelation caused an uproar across many systems. Civilizations under Thalaxian influence began to question their allegiances, and debates raged among the Galactic Council members. The Thalaxians, cornered and defensive, claimed the actions were necessary for galactic biosecurity, but the damage was done. Their image as ecological custodians was shattered, opening the door for serious diplomatic negotiations and a re-evaluation of their role in the galaxy. For Marcus and Alex, the mission was a success, but the victory was hollow. As they watched the proceedings, both understood that the path to peace was still fraught with challenges. But now, there was a real chance to change the course of galactic history, grounded in truth and transparency. The revelations from Sector 957 sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy, undermining the Thalaxian Dominion's moral and political authority. With their image tarnished, they faced growing dissent within their own ranks and a loss of support from their allied species. This shift in the galactic balance gave humanity a much-needed advantage. Back on Earth, Marcus, Alex, and General Ramirez convened to discuss their next steps in a suddenly changed landscape. "The Thalaxians are weakened but not defeated," General Ramirez cautioned as they gathered in the strategy room. "We need to leverage this momentum. If we can get other civilizations to see us as partners in restoring galactic balance, we may be able to end this conflict without further bloodshed." Alex nodded, pulling up a galactic map. "There are a few key systems where Thalaxian influence is wavering. If we can offer support to these regions, perhaps in rebuilding their ecosystems or defending against Thalaxian reprisals, we could solidify new alliances." Marcus, who had been quieter since their return, finally spoke up. "We also need to keep the pressure on diplomatically. Let's push for a peace conference. With the Thalaxians on the defensive, we might be able to negotiate a ceasefire." The suggestion was timely. Within days, calls for a peace conference began to circulate through diplomatic channels, supported by several major powers now questioning the Thalaxian stance. The Thalaxians, realizing their precarious position, agreed to the talks, which were to be held on the neutral planet of Valterix. As the conference approached, Marcus was selected as one of the human delegates. His first-hand experience and the respect he had garnered since the mission made him a natural choice. He prepared meticulously, knowing that the stakes were high, not just for humanity but for the stability of the entire galaxy. The conference room on Valterix was a vast circular chamber, filled with representatives from dozens of species, each with their own grievances and hopes pinned on the outcome of these talks. The Thalaxians, led by Ambassador Zirine, were visibly isolated, a stark contrast to their usual commanding presence. As the negotiations began, Marcus took the lead for the human delegation, presenting a vision of a galactic community based on mutual respect and ecological stewardship. He cited the successful use of the bees as an example of innovative, non-lethal conflict resolution, emphasizing humanity's commitment to peace and sustainability. Ambassador Zirine, under pressure, struggled to defend their actions, arguing that the Thalaxian methods were necessary to maintain biosecurity and order. However, the evidence of their manipulation and the ecological damage they had caused spoke louder than words. The turning point came when a coalition of minor species, previously under Thalaxian protection, voiced their support for Marcus's proposal. They shared their own stories of exploitation and ecological damage, strengthening the case against the Thalaxians. After intense deliberations, an agreement was reached. The Thalaxians would withdraw from several contested systems, submit to third-party oversight of their ecological interventions, and pay reparations to the affected worlds. In return, the human-led coalition would assist in ecological restoration projects and maintain a defensive stance rather than an offensive one in the galaxy. As the conference concluded, Marcus felt a cautious optimism. They had achieved a diplomatic victory that few had thought possible. But more importantly, they had laid the groundwork for a new galactic order, one where dialogue and cooperation could prevent conflicts rather than escalate them. Returning to Earth, Marcus knew that the real work was just beginning. The work of building and sustaining peace. But for now there was hope, a rare and precious thing in the often cold and unforgiving expanse of space. Following the successful peace conference on Valtrix, a cautious yet hopeful atmosphere enveloped humanity's diplomatic circles. Marcus, back on Earth, was deeply involved in implementing the newly formed agreements, ensuring that each stipulation was honored not just in letter, but in spirit. In the command center, Marcus sat with General Ramirez and Alex, poring over the details of the peace treaty. "We need to set up monitoring stations in the systems where the Thalaxians are withdrawing," Marcus suggested. "It's crucial to ensure they're actually scaling back their operations and not just relocating their activities." General Ramirez nodded in agreement. "I'll coordinate with the United Nations Space Command to deploy observation satellites as soon as possible. We also need a rapid response team ready in case the Thalaxians try anything underhanded." Alex, who had been quiet, looked up from his tablet. "There's also the matter of the ecological restoration projects. We promised to help rehabilitate the ecosystems damaged by the Thalaxians. It's going to be a massive undertaking." "Yes," Marcus replied. "And it's not just about repairing physical environments. We need to rebuild trust with those civilizations. Our role in their recovery will define our future relations." The trio spent the next several weeks coordinating a multifaceted approach. Marcus led a team of ecologists and biologists to the most affected systems, starting with Sector 957, where they had uncovered the Thalaxian atrocities. Using a combination of terrestrial and alien technologies, they began the slow process of ecological restoration, reintroducing native species and removing invasive Thalaxian plants. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts continued. Marcus frequently traveled to other planets, meeting with local leaders and Galactic Council members to discuss progress and address any concerns. These missions were often tense, with the scars of Thalaxian dominance still fresh, but Marcus's honest and open approach gradually won him allies and friends among the stars. During one such mission on the planet Kalendor, Marcus was approached by a delegation of Kalendorian scientists. "Dr. Reed," one of them began, "we've been impressed by your work. We have ideas on how to improve the efficiency of the ecological restoration with some of our native technologies." Marcus welcomed their input, knowing that collaborative efforts were the key to long-term success. "That sounds excellent. Let's set up a workshop to discuss this further. The more knowledge we share, the stronger our alliance will be." Back on Earth, news of the progress was met with widespread approval. Humanity was not only defending its right to exist and expand, but was also becoming a galactic steward, leading by example. As the months passed, the initial protocols laid out at Valtorix solidified into lasting policies. The galaxy began to stabilize, and the threat of Thalaxian aggression diminished. Peace, it seemed, was taking hold, fostered by the diligent efforts of Marcus and countless others committed to a vision of mutual respect and shared prosperity. In one of his reports to the United Nations Space Command, Marcus wrote, "We've turned a corner in our history. The challenges ahead remain formidable, but for the first time, we face them together, not as separate species fighting for dominance, but as a unified community working towards a common future." With the groundwork for lasting peace and cooperation laid, Marcus felt a profound sense of accomplishment and optimism. The future, once clouded by the threat of destruction, now promised new horizons of exploration and understanding. Months had passed since the peace treaties were signed and the ecological restoration projects initiated. The galaxy had settled into a new rhythm of cooperation and recovery. On Earth, Marcus found himself at the center of planning for the future, tasked with overseeing continued diplomatic relations and the sharing of technologies that had been pivotal in the peace process. In the serene quiet of the United Earth Headquarters garden, Marcus walked alongside General Ramirez, reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. "I never imagined our project with the bees would evolve into something this impactful," Marcus mused, looking at the vibrant flowers around them, a testament to Earth's rejuvenation. General Ramirez smiled, her eyes thoughtful. You gave us more than a weapon, Marcus. You gave us a new way to think about problem-solving in the galaxy. Your bees were a symbol, proof that even the smallest creatures can influence the balance of power. Marcus nodded, his thoughts turning to the broader implications of their work. It's about understanding and respect, isn't it? Whether it's bees, humans, or any other life form, recognizing the value and potential of every creature is crucial. As they walked, a young aide approached, handing Marcus a tablet with an update on the latest interspecies technology exchange program. Looks like the Kalandorians have made some breakthroughs with the tech we shared. They've improved their agricultural yields by 20%. Marcus read aloud, a note of pride in his voice. That's incredible, General Ramirez responded. It's outcomes like this that prove we're on the right path. Later that day, Marcus stood before a gathering of Earth's leaders and representatives from various galactic civilizations. As he began his speech, he felt the weight of history on his shoulders. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the galactic community, Marcus began, his voice steady. We stand here today at a pivotal moment. Not long ago, we faced the threat of annihilation, not just of our species, but of our very principles. Through unity and a commitment to innovative solutions, we have not only averted disaster, but have laid the foundation for a future built on cooperation. He continued, outlining plans for further collaborations, including joint exploration missions and shared scientific endeavors. Let this be our legacy, Marcus declared, that when faced with unimaginable challenges, we chose to reach out, not with weapons, but with open hands. The assembly responded with resounding applause, their faces a mosaic of diverse species united by a common goal. Marcus felt a deep satisfaction, knowing that the legacy of their efforts would resonate far into the future. As the crowd dispersed, Alex joined him, clapping him on the back. You did it, Marcus. You really did. Marcus looked around, his gaze settling on the bustling crowd of delegates engaging eagerly with one another. We did it, Alex. It's just the beginning, though. There's so much more to do, so much more to learn from each other. That evening, as Marcus looked up at the stars, he felt a profound connection to the vast, mysterious universe. The stars no longer seemed distant and cold, but rather like beacons of hope, each one a reminder of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. The story of humanity's conflict and eventual peace with the Thalaxians would be remembered not for the brief war, but for the enduring peace that followed, marked by a collective effort to better understand and preserve the galaxy's rich tapestry of life. Marcus knew that the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, but he was confident that humanity was ready to meet them with the same courage and ingenuity they had shown so far.